Hey, good morning. Well, Dinah pretty much took my entire presentation just now when she said the Bill Gates quote of technology being used as a tool, and you guys are the most important part as teachers in the classroom. So I guess I'm finished. No, I'm actually here to sort of reiterate what Dinah was saying about technology and its use in the classroom with students and how you facilitate that use to be meaningful. As she said, I currently am the Learning Innovation Coach at Korea International School in Pangyo, as I have been for the past year and a half now. And before that, I was a Director of Technology in China. And for the past 10 years, I've looked at ways for teachers to implement technology in the classroom in a meaningful way, to help students expand what they're doing beyond the classroom walls. Because I really think that technology improves learning if it's used correctly. I really love the title of the book that we're using today, sort of the idea here of a theme of revitalizing your class. So to start with revitalizing this morning, I'm going to vitalize a little bit. So I'm going to ask you to turn to the person next to you, if you know them, try to find someone you don't know, and just really quickly discuss this quote. What does this mean to you as an educator or as a parent? What does this mean? Give you a few seconds to turn and discuss. Wake up in the morning. Sorry, I know this is what kids hate to do, have to discuss with each other. Go ahead, have a discussion, really quickly. I hear one conversation going on. You don't have to whisper. All right, if you could just finish up those conversations here in the next 10 seconds. When I started teaching 17 years ago, I thought that my job was to shove as much of the knowledge in my brain into my students' brains. That's what I figured I was supposed to do all day long. I was just supposed to make sure that when they left my science class, that they knew what mitosis was, and that they could explain that to someone else. And if they knew that, then they would be better off than I was when I left my science class. And so my whole goal as a starting teacher was just to make sure that all of the knowledge and skills I knew how to do were passed on to my students. And since then, I've been learning a lot. And I've realized that what we're supposed to be doing as educators is helping students gain knowledge, but at the same time, we're really trying to let them find how they learn best. And we can do that through any content, whether it be science, or whether it be teaching them English, or whether it be math. But our goal is to truly inspire students, and technology can help us do that. Here's a problem with a lot of programs in the world. They ask, what are we going to do? And they say, okay, we're going to go 100% to online collaborative documents, and we're going to go to Google, and we're going to say, hey, students, you're going to use everything technology now. Throw away all the books, get rid of them. We're going technology only. How are we going to do it? Well, we're going to throw away the books, and then we're going to sign up for Google, and everyone's going to have an online ID, and we're going to give them devices, and then they can just do technology, right? And then we get to the why are we doing this? Because that's what we're supposed to be doing right now. We're talking about technology. Everyone says technology is the thing to do. This is usually when it goes wrong. And there's an amazing book by Simon Sinek, and it's really written for businesses. And it's about how to instigate change in an organization, but it fits perfectly for technology in education. Always start with the why. Why are we doing this? Why do we want to bring technology into education? Well, We want to give students a challenging, authentic, personalized learning experience. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to train teachers. And we're going to train teachers so that they're able to develop rich curriculum with technology tied into it, so that students are able to communicate with each other outside of the classroom walls and communicate with me as a teacher outside of the classroom walls and time. What are we going to do? Yeah, we're going to sign them up. We're going to get Google going. We're going to give them mobile devices. We're going to ask them to use their personal devices. It's okay. We're going to train them how to use technology responsibly. On a study done, this is a few years ago now, but John Hattie did a study of schools in Maine which implemented a one-to-one technology program in classes. And what John Hattie found was that there were students that showed improvement in their learning, but only if these requirements were met. This was from surveys as well as test data. He found that students were improving their learning. And so when we're asking the why technology, it's because, I'm hoping this laser pointer works, it's because technology allows for certain things to happen that don't necessarily occur with the old school way of teaching. Technology allows for students to have multiple avenues to learn the same topic. Technology allows for students to be the ones that are controlling what they do and how they learn. And most importantly is that last one. How do we give good feedback to students? Is it timely, and is it relevant? So hopefully today, I'm going to be going through some options that we have to use technology effectively. And I'm going to start with a fairly simple tool. Google Classroom is a very easy way to get started into seamlessly integrating technology. And according to Google, the classroom was set up to do the following things. It was meant to simplify your life as teachers, as well as the experience of your students. It was meant to simplify the creation of your lessons and simplify how students can interact with those units and assignments. It was meant to help you to get those assignments to your students and distribute them not always the same assignment, because we know that not all students need to learn the same thing at the same time. And so we're able to assign a class assignment, we're able to give individual students certain practices, and we're able to do that much easier than having to photocopy a bunch of pages and make different piles for different students, because now it's just with a simple click. And so Google was right on that. It's very easy to distribute. And finally, they say it's much easier, according to Google, to grade. I personally have an issue with the word grade, but we're not going to get too much into that. I think that feedback is a really good thing, and so I'm going to go against Google, forget you. I like the fact that it's really simplified in the way that we provide feedback to students. It really makes it easy for us to start a conversation with our students and to tell them how they can further their learning, so that not only the knowledge that we want them to have is there, but also they begin to understand how they learn best. So let's talk a little bit about how we do that within this platform. And the nicest thing is that it's all free. If you work at a school that is a Google school, it's all set up for you. If not, as an individual teacher, you have the capability of creating ad hoc classes. I mean, you can create one class and invite all the people you want. All you need is a Gmail account. So I'm going to go under the premise now that we're all able to grab ourselves a Gmail account. Once you've done that, all you need to do is head over to Google Classroom. Okay? And for those of you who do have cell phones still out, if you want to, feel free to head there now. There's a Classroom app that makes this really easy, and you can interact with us as we do this presentation. Once you get there, it's going to look a little empty. This is your dashboard when you begin. And it kind of looks like we need to do something. So the first thing we're going to do is head on up, and we're going to add our first class. The nicest thing is you can add as many classes as you want, all for free. Once we begin creating the class, I figured we were going to be in a ballroom today, but you need to give it some information. And you see here it has a section number. So if you teach 3 sections of the same class, you can just create duplicates of it, and then all of your assignments can be distributed directly to each section, or you can just do one section at a time. Right? But make sure that you set this up in a way that makes sense to you. The magic of the create button. All of a sudden it looks like we have something. And so once we are in our dashboard, we see that we have sort of a stream. And the stream looks empty now because we haven't done anything with it yet. But this is really an important piece. It looks kind of like a social media feed. It kind of looks like a Facebook running post. And whether it be a gimmick or not, students understand this way better than, at least way better than I do. They understand this mode of communication. And so they look to the top of something where I always scroll down to the bottom because that's where I'm used to my emails being and all the things happening. They always start at the top just because that's the most recent post in Facebook, and that's kind of changed the way that we consume information. So if you wanted to just share something with your class, you're able to write a quick note. Here's what's happening tomorrow in class, or make sure you bring this to your class next time. And you can start a conversation with multiple threaded streams. Adding students in Google Classroom is easy. We're just going to go up to the people area, and once you click on the people area, you now have the option to add people, as we would hope. One would be other teachers. So if I click over here, I'm able to add another teacher to collaborate on this class with me. And those teachers can give assignments. Those teachers can respond to students. Those teachers can grade assignments also. You can add students. And you can add students in 2 ways. One, if you know this, if you know the student's Gmail account email, you can add them by just typing it in and they'll get an invite. The other option is down here, you get a class code. And so our class code for today's teachers that I set up is here. If any of you are on the Classroom app and you've already gotten set up, you can add our class today and we can talk for years to come after this conference, if you'd like, about some of this information. But the class code is unique to your class, and all you need to do is give it to students. Once they sign in, they'll automatically be here. Now, luckily, my wife has a couple accounts, and so she signed up for my class a couple times. But this is just to show you exactly what it looks like when you see students. And in the people section, you're going to see all of the students that are associated with the class. I've created one called International School. That's the one I'm going to use as a demo today. And you can give multiple actions. So you can actually kick students out if they're not supposed to be there. Or you can give students a special priority. Or you can actually assign students to different groups within the class. So that I can say, you guys are working together on the same topic. All assignments that I assign to the group automatically go to you. So within Classroom, you can subdivide all the students. It makes it really versatile when, as we said, creating and distributing assignments. Classwork is where we're going to go to assign some work. And so if I click on the Create, I'm given an easy menu item. And that menu item allows me to create a title of the assignment, give them some instructions. I can assign it to one student, or just all students, or students in a certain group. And finally, when I click on Assign, I'm given an option to assign assignments in the far, far future. So I don't have to have the assignment assigned today. I can start planning, and I can begin creating things that I know will be due in 2 weeks, or I know that we're going to have an exam coming up, and I have some review material for them in a couple weeks. So the Assign and Schedule is a great option. So now, we begin to see that we have some more stuff in our dashboard. We've created some assignments. I've posted a new assignment we can still share with our class, but we also have this upcoming. And so now I know that due on Friday, we've got a 3D printing reflection. This is for obviously my 3D design class, right? So we have this 3D printing reflection. And students see the same thing on their dashboard. They see what's upcoming, and so it's really easy for them to keep track of what's happening. In the top left, we have the option to see all of our classes, but also we have a calendar. And so this view allows me to, instead of break things down in the traditional sort of stream way, I'm able to look at a calendar of assignments that are coming up. And I can click into those assignments directly from this menu. Students have this as well. Also, if you're thinking of it from the student perspective, if I was in a school that used Google Classroom and I had multiple teachers with multiple classes, all of my assignments for the 23rd would be on there. And so from a student's perspective, it's a great organizational tool. And since I, as a student, have one account, even if teachers, say from different academies or from different schools, put assignments on there, they don't even have to be part of the same institution. Because I've logged in, all of them would be on there. And that's amazing. If I'm a student and I click in, I'm going to switch over to Student View. And when I click to Student View here, you'll notice that up here I've changed to the international school symbol. The student view, from clicking on that first assignment, this is what they see. They'll see the title of the assignment. They'll see the time that I made it. Okay. And they'll get some of the instructions that are there. So right now we're going to read, and we need to find some metaphors in the given text. From the student's point of view, they're able to add materials they have. So say they wrote something and they wanted them to take a picture of it. That's the assignment, for you to take a picture and upload it. Anything they have that they can add from their device goes on there. You can create Google Docs or Sheets or slides or anything you want them to do. They can create it from right in here. They can add a private comment to you, and this is the most powerful part, is we're beginning to start conversations between you and one student. That's feedback, but it doesn't mean that I physically have to be in the same spot as that student, which is really where technology is empowering. Because now they can do it when they want to work, which I've found is usually at 2 in the morning for some reason. That's when they're responding to things. And you can respond 2 in the morning if you feel like it, or you can respond the next day. They also have the option to add a class comment, which is great because now it starts a conversation amongst the whole class. There's so many times I, as a teacher, put an assignment out there, and I think it's the best written assignment in the world, and instructions are clear, and kids come back and they go, I have no idea what you wanted us to do. Now, I'm assuming that's probably my fault. Where is this class comment right here? One student can feel free to ask that question, and everyone can say, yeah, Mr. McElroy, we're having some issues here. Can you please help us out? So it's a great way to have a conversation asynchronously. If they choose to create an assignment, they can go straight into a Google Doc, and they can begin working as if they were writing down on a piece of paper, taking a picture of it, or as if they're going to create a doc that they can edit later. And the beautiful thing is now there's a new button in Google. So if they create it from there, they can turn it in directly from there. It creates a copy for them. It creates a copy for you. If you've asked them to collaborate, they can share it with their other students in the class. But once they've clicked Turn In, this is what it changes to for them. We now have the assignment, the instructions, and they have this option here where now they have given our work, but they still have the option to unsubmit it. So until you look at it, if they realize they've made a mistake, they can unsubmit and they can go back. So it's not like that Turn In button is the end-all, be-all. Here's what it looks like on your end. You can give them that traditional grade. I can give them the 16 out of 20. More importantly, I can write them a comment. And although this comment here, they've identified that first metaphor, but clearly there's some other metaphors that we need to discuss or talk about that they missed on page 4, I can, of course, choose to point it out right here. I could say, come see me. We'll have a discussion now. But it's a conversation at this point. And so feedback is being given, not just in number score. From the student's view, they get it back, they see the score. Usually that's what they'll key in on first. But we're trying to teach students that this is the most important part. We now have this conversation starter. They can write back to me, and now we have a communication. This has to be in class. It doesn't have to be in class. they also have the option to resubmit. So it's great if you want to give them a second chance. It's great if you want them to look for that metaphor on page 4, add to their document, and send it back to you. Okay. This greatly reduces time, but it also reduces paper waste. It also reduces all sorts of other things, and that's really where technology is coming in handy, because now this can all be digital. From a teacher's view, when I look at a student, here's my international school student, I see all of the assignments that they've done. I can filter out for the ones that they haven't turned in yet, but I can also see where they stand. I've graded the collaborative story, the rubric for literacy, the sentence fluency, and the first assignment. I can see already I've given them a grade. I need to check what is the main character's motivation in Chapter 4, because they've turned it in but have no score. And days of the week, they haven't turned that in yet. It's been assigned to them, but they haven't turned anything in. So I, from a viewpoint, can see very quickly what one student looks like. If I look at one assignment, now I'm looking at just the assignment of sentence fluency. This is the really nice dashboard. I'm able to see all of the students, what their scores are, right? I can email the entire class, everyone who has one filter in this dashboard. I'm able to see if there's any that have been turned in but not graded, or assigned but not turned in. All 3 of these students have been graded, and even better, I can see right here what classes or what classwork they've turned in with it. How many of you use Google Drive for any sort of personal ideas, personal work? Okay. How many of you use it with students in class? Okay. One of the nightmares of not using Classroom is the distribution within your own Google Drive of how things look. So if I look at this, the best part about Classroom is that it puts all student work into a folder that's by assignment and all nice and organized for you. So all of their work you can find later just by going to My Drive, Classroom, and then all of your classes will have a separate folder, all of the assignments will have a separate folder, and it's automatically in there for you. I spent years working with Google Drive and having to move students' things around into the right place. Once again, save yourself time. And then finally, for those of us who really like to see numbers and grades, which I still do, you can download all of the grades of all of the assignments into a spreadsheet already done for you. It'll give you the class averages, it'll give you averages of each student, it'll show you where there's missing assignments, either they haven't turned in or you haven't graded yet, and it gives them the point value already for each of their assignments. So this is a tool, is a very, very, very flexible tool for your ability to communicate with students, but also something that will save you time in integrating your technology into your classroom. Assignments. You can attach photos or documents that you've already made. You can attach things from your Google Drive. You can create a hyperlink to something you want them to watch or see before the assignment. But this is probably my most favorite button right here. Okay? I'm going to ask you to talk to a different person this time. I may even ask you for 30 seconds to stand up and find someone else, just to turn around and get out of your seats because we've been listening to me for too long. When was the last time you learned something on YouTube? 1 minute. 1 minute. When was the last time YouTube had taught you anything? Have you learned anything on YouTube in the past year? And what was it? Tell the person next to you. Get them interested in what you learned. Hi, how you doing? Good. All right, so thank you for engaging with the person next to you. Thank you for engaging with me, the people who are unlucky enough to be in this corner. I currently I help teach a class on computer-aided design. And I had a student last week who was leaving the classroom early, and he said, "Mr. McElroy, I'm off to track meet." Edward, all right. We're using Fusion 360 in this class, which is professional level AutoCAD software. And I'm a little worried about Edward because he's always gone. He's always leaving the class early. He's got sports and he's always heading off. So I looked at him and I said, "Edward, how in the world are you leaving early again?" He said, "Mr. McElroy, I'm so busy." I know, okay. How are you going to learn how to constrain your circles to tangential lines so that when we build the form, you're going to be able to pull from one face and create your 3D object? And he looks at me and he goes, "Mr. McElroy, have you ever heard of YouTube?" Okay. And I had to realize that he was right, because YouTube is an immensely powerful tool if it's used correctly, obviously, for students. It's an immensely powerful tool for anything. But I had to remind myself of that after Edward's sort of comments of, "I don't need you, I can learn all this from YouTube," which goes back to are we filling a pail, which YouTube can do, or are we trying to inspire students to learn? And so the other day I got into, and I just said, I gotta remember YouTube. And so in 35 minutes, I learned the scoring system for Taekwondo, because I didn't know that. I reminded myself how I would perhaps teach students how to play an E chord. All right? I figured out the easiest way to solve a Sudoku puzzle, which I thought this was pretty cool. Yeah, get rid of numbers and put pictures on there, because my brain works way better with pictures. I don't know why. And then, of course, I learned how to have a conversation coming through immigration if I wanted. And that was in 35 minutes. Now, here's the thing. If you don't know YouTube, and most of our students think they know YouTube, this is what you're going to get. Something that looks like this. And they're going to type in English, words, or sentence, fluency, or how do I speak English? And they're going to get playlists that are just an overabundance of information that they don't really need. So what is our job? Our job as teachers is to filter YouTube for them. When I was in China, they blocked YouTube. So at our school, we had this conversation about, do we allow YouTube into our school because we could get around that because it's such a good learning tool? And we had teachers say, no, it's blocked for a reason. It's because it's distracting. That's a great reason if you don't want students to learn how to filter information. YouTube is an amazing tool. We don't want to discount it just because it can be distracting. And our job is to get rid of all this junk and find videos that we like. Say, for example, this is a great tutorial on using gerunds in the correct way, and making playlists for students. So if you're on YouTube and you're logged in, all you've got to go down here is to create this little playlist thing. I'm going to call it a playlist thing. And tap on that and begin adding videos with a certain theme to them. And then you share that link with your students. That link that you're sharing with your students gets them to a confined space where the videos are already playing for them. Now, once again, can they click off that video? Yes. But the point is we've tried to get them down the right path. There are apps, if you're using mobile devices, that lock it down so you can only see the YouTube you want. I'm not going to go into too much about those because there are tons of them, and they work sometimes really well and sometimes they don't. But the idea is YouTube is an amazing tool. Don't shy away from it just because, like myself, students get distracted when they're on YouTube. Help them. Cull the videos, make playlists, and assign those playlists through Google Classroom, because then you can see when they've watched the video. I'm going to move on from tools. And I'm going to begin speaking a little bit more about what we want to do as teachers with technology and getting them past just simple tool usage. And so technology has really inspired me to become a better teacher because there's so many more things you can do. And if you Google search 21st century learning skills, you'll find a lot of different sort of platforms around this. My favorite, because of its simplicity right now, are the 4 C's. Has anyone heard of the 4 C's or want to help me out? What are some of the 4 C's? What's a 4C? Creativity. Communication. Collaboration. You guys are all on top of this, so we're in great shape right now. These are what we really want our students to come out with. Like I said, I want my students to know what mitosis is, because I think it's important if they're going to go to medical school. But to be fully honest with you, if they know how to communicate and critically think, if they got to medical school and didn't know what mitosis was, they could figure it out pretty quickly. So my point is that no matter what the content is that we're teaching our students, we want them to be this. Okay? And technology allows for this. I'm going to skip the collaboration and critical thinking right now, because I don't have as much time. I'm going to go straight into talking about how technology can aid in students communicating better and students being creative. And I'm going to argue that creativity, if you design creative lessons for your students, that the communication will come from that. And that's really my hope as language teachers, is that we're creating units of inquiry for our students, which, as they're going through this creative process, they'll learn how to communicate. So let me give you some examples. This is Nadine Gordimer. And when I was in 10th grade, I had an English class and so that's a long time ago, so yeah, 10th grade, we're talking mid-90s. And I had an English class with a very innovative teacher, Mr. Berniski. And Mr. Berniski had gotten in touch with Nadine Gordimer. And we were reading short stories by Nadine Gordimer. And one of the things that we had to do every Thursday was go to the computer lab, right? We didn't have devices. We had to go to a place where the computers all were. And we sat down in the computer lab and we said, okay. And Mr. Berniski said, you're going to type an email to Nadine Gordimer. What's an email? We talked through what an email was. And we went through the process. Every Thursday, we would go to the computer lab and we would write our email to Nadine Gordimer, asking her questions about the story. Why did you choose this character? And we had this communication with the author. And then, of course, we have to wait, because Nadine Gordimer wasn't on iMessage or Kakao Chat going, oh, yeah, here comes a question, let me respond. No, Nadine Gordimer would have to go to her computer, read all of our questions, and write back. And so then the next Thursday, we would all run to the computer lab and we'd wait. Did Nadine Gordimer write us back? She's this really famous author, and we're reading her stories. And so we would do that every Thursday. We'd get a response, we'd think about it, we'd type back a response to her, and we'd have this communication. Now, fast forward so many years, I don't remember a thing that was in this book. Not a single story. I've gone back and looked, and so now I do kind of know, but asked me that last year, I have no idea what the stories were about. I knew there was something about, there's conflicts and issues, and she was from South Africa, so maybe apartheid had to do with it, but I didn't remember a thing about the book. What I do remember is this. I remember how to communicate. I remember the excitement I had about getting a message back from halfway across the world. I remember how to write the intro to an email, which we don't do anymore. I remember how to write the body of an email, and then I remember how to sign off an email. And that's what I learned from this activity, really. I learned how to communicate with someone that wasn't in the same room as me. That was the power of this lesson, and that was what technology allowed us to do. Because, like I said, I could go back and read the book Jump, but I really don't remember anything from it. So the content wasn't the important part. It was this activity that was important. This is how we communicate today, or some of us do, right? We've got emojis and all of these things, and we've got stuff that to us maybe doesn't make sense, but we have to realize that the communication skills are changing, and we need to be ready for that. We do need to teach English and sentence fluency, and we do need to teach grammar, and that's the most important part of what we're doing. Yet, remember, the activity is what they're probably going to remember. And if you do all of that content through activities that they'll remember, they might remember the content, unlike me in that story. But I learned some skills. An easy tool to use is Skype. This is a classroom at Korea International School, and this classroom is engaged in a Skype conversation with a school that's in Kuwait. And when you get these students together, this is the most exciting day, because they are using technology to get with students that are the same age as them, but in a completely different place. And the questions they ask are hilarious, like, did you eat breakfast this morning? Like, probably. But the idea is that they look forward to this type of interaction in class. And students are asked individually to come up and have questions that they have prepared to ask the other class. And then a student from this class is able to respond. And these types of interactions are really what allows technology to be so influential in those students' lives. It's really easy to set up, right? And one of the things that will pop back up at the end is my email address. Please get in touch if you're looking for classes around the world, because one of the things that you begin doing is seeing teachers all around the world that want to do this. And so if you're looking for how to make connections, that's the first step, is really to find another teacher who is like-minded and is willing to open their classroom up. This project is a project where students in middle school are asked to design something for teachers in the school. And so they're actually not in any English class whatsoever. They clearly are in an English class. They're learning English as they go. But the class itself is AutoCAD, and they're trying to design something. But what's the communication skill they're learning? They're learning that they have to go to the teacher first and have an interview and ask the teacher, what is it that you want me to build? What are your needs? They must become empathetic with the teacher. And the teachers tell them, here's what I'm looking for. And then the students come back and they begin designing something. And then they have to go back to the teacher and say, here's what I've designed. What do you think so far? And the teachers have this conversation. And it's a really, really exciting time when these kids come back and say, oh, I've got to change this little tiny thing because Mr. So-and-so said, he's got to use it with a little hook in it or something like that. This type of communication can't be taught by just saying, here's what you will do. You will go ask these 5 questions, because it's not real life. And so the activity itself has nothing to do with teaching communication. But communication, if the activity is correctly designed, really does. And so it's finding these opportunities for our students to be creative and showing them that their creativity is something that's important. They begin communicating better. They're already not scared to go to a teacher that's way older than them and say, I don't like your idea, I'm going to make it green. And the teacher goes, oh, okay. So they begin this process of creativity and communication through it. This is an example. I run a coding club at school, and when I say I run it, I don't do anything. I just show up and take roll to make sure that students are there. Students run it, and every week a different set of students has to run the class. Meaning they have to stand up in front of their peers and they begin talking through, here's what we're going to be coding today, here's why we're going to put in indefinite loops. And so they have to become sort of the masters of the information, and they disseminate that amongst their peers. And so the last project, we had students with teachers, youngs to adults. Now we're talking about peer communication, which is very different. Right? Peers are so much worse than adults to kids because we give them credit, or we kind of forgive certain things as adults, especially if you're a teacher. A student comes to you and asks you in a way that you don't think is right, you'll kind of let them fly on that. But talk to someone the same age and that's not the same. And so this is another example of allowing a creative way, students running class, in something that's not graded, right? This is a coding club. They're just trying to learn how to code. Give them that option for students to run that activity, and you begin seeing them understand how to communicate with each other better. Making videos. Allow your students to create tutorial videos for other students. All right? With the ease of mobile devices these days, right, with a phone or an iPod or a tablet device or even their computer and just running a screenshot, let them do this. Because the best part about having them run a video is that they get to take the video, they get to watch it, they get so excited watching themselves on video, obviously, and then they can modify it if it's not right. Or they can send it to their peers, and their peers can say, oh, I don't quite understand this part, can you retake that? And this is the least high-stress part, because kids love making videos, and if the video's not right, they can change it. Unlike when you lead a class of your peers and you mess up, then there's no time to take that back. This is a really cool activity. So I cannot stress enough how important it is to give your students the opportunity to use the mobile devices they have to create content for their peers. It's a really powerful tool. And the language skills are always going to be there. Right? They need to be able to communicate those ideas. And guess what? If they're good, you get to use them the next year and don't have to create them yourselves. Here's a student that we've given. This student right here is very shy, extremely shy. And we could not get this student to communicate any of her ideas. And so we have to use visible thinking. And visible thinking obviously is creating videos or drawing or whatever. So the mobile device allows her to, and it doesn't have to be, here's the thing. Remember Bill Gates' idea on tools. You don't have to use a mobile device for this. She just likes drawing on the iPad. But you could have her draw her thoughts and communicate that way. And so it's when we value the creativity, we begin to get more communication. And then finally, this is perhaps my favorite video that I've ever seen a student make. And this is a, let's see, grade junior kindergarten, so just before kindergarten. And I'd say probably, either 4 or 5-year-old, and wouldn't speak at all in class. And so they were having to write their books. And so we couldn't get the student to read the book to their parents when they came in. But man, you stick an iPad and just say, you're going to take a picture and record your voice, sound.
Oh, a cupcake. My favorite food is cupcake. I like cupcake very much. Oh, that is my cupcake. Give me that. This cupcake is mine. I found it. No, cupcake is just mine. Cupcake is just on the floor. The cupcake is gone. The cupcake. Oh my, where is the cupcake? Oof, oof. What is that? Oof, oof. Oh, it's there. Oh my God.
Okay. Fantastic. Now, absolutely amazing, because the excitement of this student is pretty evident in the video itself. But when you watch the student run around with an iPad and force the iPad in other kids' hands and say, watch my video, that student who wouldn't read that story to that other student was able to communicate their ideas just fine. We know that they're able to begin communicating and they're learning valuable skills. They have the knowledge. Sometimes we just don't see it. And so this is another avenue where technology allows someone to communicate better through creativity. Publish. Make sure that your students are able to publish their work. Now, there are issues sometimes with publishing to too large of an audience, but there are ways to publish to just your school, just your class, just your family. Okay? But the most important part is an authentic audience for your students. So that student shoving that iPad into their peers' hands is because that's an audience. I know we like to think of ourselves as really important, but when a student writes a paper and I'm the one who reads it and then hands it right back to them, that's pretty lame. As a student, I'm like, ugh, you're the only one reading it. Why would I care how well I write it unless I really want that grade? And in essence, we need to teach students that what they write and how they communicate and what they create will be seen by a larger group of people. And that's what allows for them to think, maybe I'm going to do a better job on this, or maybe I'm going to put a little extra time into it. Because I know if I write something and I know one person's going to read it, I'm going to make mistakes. I'm not going to check it. I don't care, unless that person is paying me a salary. If I know that 400 people are going to be in a room, I'm hoping to spell publish correctly when it's on a slide behind me. How do we publish? Lots of different avenues to publish. Okay? Lots of different avenues. These are just a few of them, and I'm going to give some examples of each, just in how they look when you do implement them in the classroom. So for those of you who don't, so we got YouTube, obviously. This is WordPress. Any form of WordPress will work, whether it be old school WordPress or whether you be running like a Wix or a Weebly or whatever. This is Padlet, Google Sites, and SoundCloud for audio. Right? And so these platforms allow for free publishing of audio and video. YouTube, obviously, classic way to go. It's so easy. You just upload a video and boom, slide it in there and away you go. And you can lock down YouTube videos so that you can make them private. You can make them so within YouTube, you can create in your Google Classroom, you can create a safe YouTube area where it's not going to be listed on the internet and you have to have the link to the YouTube video to find it. Right? And so those are ways to protect some of those publishing rights. This is Padlet. And this is a group of students who are doing a book study. These are high school students. And so each one of them was in charge of a chapter and to begin talking about what was happening in the chapter. Now, instead of like doing this in a traditional classroom of having post-it notes and running around saying chapter 1 is this and writing a piece of paper and then having people walk around the room and look at that, even though that's valuable, okay, that's valuable, this is also extremely valuable because it's modifiable at any time. And this can be transferred to the next class. Other students can read it. They can make comments on this if they want. And Padlet's a great free tool. If you've never used Padlet, walk out of this room, sign up quickly for Padlet.com, P-A-D-L-E-T. It allows you to drop post-it notes on a wall, move things around, make connections. You can add video, websites, pictures to it, and then, of course, add text. It's a really, really powerful tool. This is where creativity, again, comes into the process. These are students who were in English class, and they were discussing, they had to create a podcast, but then in the art class, they went in and created portraits of themselves with sort of a mosaic. They were learning mosaics and art. And so the connection of the art as the cover of their podcast, which is now just hosted on a WordPress site, that inspired them to all of a sudden be thinking about both things all the time. They were thinking about their art. They were thinking about what they were putting in their podcast. They knew it was going to be published, and all of the other students were going to be able to listen to what they were doing. That made it authentic to them. That audience made it something that was important for them to do a good job on and to really, really ask questions if they didn't know how to do something. Similar with Google Sites. These are podcasts from students about cultural traditions and norms here in Korea. And these students made podcasts. These are all hosted on SoundCloud, but we used a Google site to organize it, and we can publish that site if we want. We can keep it all in Korea International School. We can let parents have access to it. We can only let students access it. We have control over who gets to see it. But once again, there's an audience that's more than just one teacher. With my final time, I'd like to just talk a little bit about education as a whole. And shifting the viewpoint of what we traditionally believed important in education and how we all as educators and teachers can really make a difference in the generation that's coming up. Once again, this is kind of like my opinion, but I think that truly I'm going to give you a few examples that make it very clear that we as teachers need to stop being the center in the front of the room telling people what to do, and more so the facilitators of students following what they want to do. So I've been in education my entire life. I was a student as a kid. My parents were teachers. I then went to university. I got out of university and went into the private sector for a very short period of time, then realized I hated it and got right back into teaching. And so for the past 30-some years, I have been in the education system, and what's striking to me is that this is a classroom from the 50s, and this is what classrooms look like in the early 1900s, and this is what classrooms look like in the late 1800s, and this is what classrooms can still look like today. And what I found is that if I'm standing up at the front of the room, much like you guys are having to listen to me here today, I begin seeing students that look like this. And some of you, I know, it's about that time to take a break. Some of you right now are probably going, when will he stop talking at me? I promise you your kids see that too. Okay? And how do we know that? We know that because of disengaged looks. And this is a crazy picture because most people say, well, it's because there's a computer in front of their face, and that's why they look engaged. They're engaged because they're watching a student's video that was responding to their student's video. And it's not the fact that they're just watching a video, it's the fact that they're engaged because they're getting feedback from a student and not from me. A student made a video about their response to their video, and these two kids couldn't be more engaged if I asked them to and paid them to. We need to use technology to create the following for our students. It needs to be challenging, authentic, and personalized. And if there's one thing that I impress upon all of you today, hopefully, it's that this is the most important part of us as teachers. How do we create an environment for students that they feel challenged, that they have something that they're doing that's authentic to them? And the best thing about technology is it can be personalized now. I don't have to send off the same assignment to every student. And we shouldn't expect all students to be at the same place at the same time. If we do, then we need to go back and think about how kids develop. What we need to do is meet students where they're at and give them some suggestions on where they need to be going. And the less they hear that from us, the better, probably. We need to facilitate something that's personalized for them. And I'm going to leave you with 3 examples. 1, this is the Justin Bieber of cooking. His name is Flynn McGarry. And Flynn McGarry, at the age of 11, was kind of disenchanted with school. He got sick of his parents cooking, so he went to YouTube and learned how to cook. And by the age of 12, he was serving $160 a head meals in Los Angeles at a pop-up restaurant. And at the age of 16, moved to New York and opened his own restaurant. Yeah, I know. Crazy. All done by YouTube. All because at the age of 11, he dropped out of school because it wasn't providing him with something. It wasn't providing him with the avenue of what was challenging for him. It wasn't really authentic for him what he was learning. He had a passion to do something else. This is Silvia Taman. She, in the 2nd grade, won the 3M Innovative Scientist Award because her favorite topic in school, she was well ahead of the other students in terms of content. Her favorite topic of school was PCR, or the polymerase chain reaction in biology. In the 2nd grade, that was her favorite thing, was looking at how you could take a single part of DNA and multiply it a bunch of different times to get a lot of copies of it. It's what they use in forensic science. If you find some blood and you need to get more DNA, you use the polymerase chain reaction to duplicate all of the DNA. But because of that being her interest, she then combined it with a supercomputer, and she took the polymerase chain reaction and found out that if you put in this simple algorithm, well, simple for her, I have no idea what she was doing. If you use this simple algorithm, you can take a drop of blood using the polymerase chain reaction in a supercomputer and determine if I'm going to have an allergic reaction to common pharmaceuticals. So in 2nd grade, she won this award because she found an algorithm to look at how people might respond due to their genetics of taking aspirin. And she's since then proliferated this into other medicines as well. She was homeschooled, never went to proper education. And finally, meet Banhat. Banhat is a local Cambodian, or student at a local Cambodia, she's Cambodian at a local school in Cambodia. And I was lucky enough 3 years ago to see him speak at a technology conference on coding and programming. And he was explaining to us how he just whipped up, he called it, I whipped up this reactive prosthetic. That's what you do. You just kind of sit there and figure out how to do it. And what he had done was he had taught himself how to program Arduinos, how to use the EMG sensors to pick up the electrical activity and then run the algorithms that are needed to make that finger move, and then all of the design to 3D print everything else that went in it. So he 3D printed the pulleys, had the pulley system all done, coded it all himself using the sensors, and then some Arduino technology, which he said he learned completely on the internet. He did take some programming classes in school, but the amount of programming you need to be able to do to take an input like an electrical signal from an EMG sensor and then code a pulley system to move with servos is fairly complex. Once again, he just whipped it up. But this is something he was passionate about, not something he was told he had to learn. And it was that creativity part that was really exciting. Now, all 3 of these examples have been on talk shows, they've all been on TV shows, they've all had to communicate their ideas in different ways. And it's the fact that they're communicating about what they really love to do. So Banhat does not speak a lot of English, but the way he can in English talk about what he's doing is amazing. It's almost as if he's fluent if he's talking about what he really loves. And that's what we need to be able to do with our students. Pick out what they love. Pick out what really drives them and allow them to kind of lead where they go. You guys as teachers, you know what knowledge they need. You know what skills they have to come out with, right? But we need to facilitate it so that it's interesting to them. All three of these students had one thing in common. They followed their passion, right? And they did not like what they were getting in school and kind of moved in a separate direction to do it. And that's when they really became successful. So, as I leave you today, what I'd really love to ask you as you continue on through this 2018 Teachers' Day is how not only are you going to learn the skills and tools you need to implement technology effectively in your classrooms, but how are you going to use it to be creative and inspire that fire to light up your students' lives? Thank you.